Nadia Murad is a Nobel Peace Prize winner, a campaigner, and a survivor of the Yazidi genocide. It's been 10 years since she was taken captive by the Islamic State in Iraq, and thousands of her people were massacred. But since she's escaped, she's been campaigning relentlessly for victims of war, lobbying governments, top politicians, and even Hollywood celebrities. In 2014, the Islamic State took over northern Iraq and persecuted any community that refused to convert to its extremist idea of Islam. But they saved a particular brand of cruelty and hate for the Yazidi religion and people. When they attacked Nadia's village, they murdered her mother, 6 of her brothers, and many more men in her family. They took younger women and children captive. The boys were indoctrinated into ISIS, while the women and girls were used as sex slaves, sold from man to man, raped and gang raped repeatedly. After 3 months, Nadia escaped, but so many others didn't.
More than 200,000 people are still displaced, and there are 3,000 women and children still missing. Do you think enough is being done to find them?
I think nothing was done to find them. Nothing was done until ISIS made the decision to murder all the men, including 6 of my brothers, my nephew, and dozens of my cousins, and the elderly women, including my mother. And then they enslaved more than 6,500 women and children into sexual slavery. Most of us who survived were able to just run away and go ask for help. But there was never a proper team from the Iraqi government or the UN or the international community to look for them. And that is why 10 years later, close to 3,000 of them are still missing, including my nephew, my niece, my sister-in-law, my cousin and her daughter, my best friends, neighbors, people that I grew up with. So yeah, the world fell.
I was born in Mogadishu, Somalia in 1969. It was a time of political turmoil. My father was in politics and my mother was illiterate, stay-at-home mom. I was born in a tribal setting, to be more precise, a clan setting. Somalia is divided into different clans. It's very important as a Somali to know your clan. That's sort of your identity card. I met my father when I was about 7 or 8 years old in Saudi Arabia, because my father was thrown in prison by the dictator Mohammed Siad Barre. And so the first about 7 or 8 years of my life was all about my father being in prison and my mother trying to make ends meet. I went to school in Kenya. There was IRE, Islamic Religious Education, and there was CRE, Christian Religious Education. Those were the 2 that were provided. And it's in one of these IRE classes, Islamic religious classes, that I encountered a different approach to religion. This teacher comes into our school and she introduced me and my classmates to a completely different concept of Islam. She started to explain to us how absolutely every part of our body was a source of arousal and therefore mischief for men. And every bit of it had to be covered. And she also had taught us how not just the physical parts of our body, even our fingers, but then it wasn't enough to just cover yourself. You could be a source of arousal for men just by your voice. So singing, laughing, raising your voice was bad. So that was the initiation into what she called not just being a Muslim in name only, but being a true Muslim. My father then comes back to Kenya. I was 21 going 22. And for a Somali Muslim man to have a daughter of that age unmarried is a conundrum. So when this Canadian man comes from his Canadian Somali relative. He comes to Kenya and they meet at the mosque. I was offered to him. And for my father, what was relevant was it's a time of civil war. Here's a provider. He's a good Muslim. He's our relative. He's our bloodline. Because he's our bloodline, you are guaranteed that he's going to treat you right. And I say, but I don't agree with you, Dad. I don't think this is the man I want to get married to. He's saying it's God's will. And there, you can't argue with God. You just submit and you obey. And that's it. The marriage was settled. As this whole process of marriage is taking place, the thoughts going through my mind is my mother's life, that I don't want to lead my mother's life. I didn't want to be persecuted by fate and live the way she lived. And so at the age of 22, I went to Holland and I asked for asylum. I didn't quite know how it would unfold, but it was a very attractive alternative. When I asked for asylum, I'm put in an asylum seeker center for about 11 whole months. And again, through the clan system, my father starts asking my uncle, where is she? And they tried to trace me through all the Somalis in Holland. I wrote this letter to my father explaining why I made the choice and apologizing and saying, I know I shamed you. I know I've broken the codes. I know all of these things, but I did it for this reason and forgive me. And he turned my letter on its side, took a red pen and wrote in this angry. He cursed me and he disowned me and called me some really ugly names. And that was to show, again, you don't mess around with the clan. And that's what I did. And so within 4 weeks of my arrival in the Netherlands, the Dutch government gave me a refugee status, which is a permanent status. And I never looked back. And so in 2002, I remember thinking about it very seriously and concluding I'm not a Muslim. And there was a big fallout with my family, with my clan, with fellow Muslims, not just in the Netherlands, but beyond, of all the big bad, stuff that I have supposedly done. That's the worst. That's the one thing, even your clan members cannot forgive you. Worse, it's your clan members who are supposed to punish you for this. So when it became public that I was no longer a Muslim, but I also openly criticized Islam's treatment of women, terrorism, etc. These people went to my father and they said, you are going to do something about this or we will do something about it. In other words, you are going to kill her or we will kill her. The first series of threats against my life that was issued by Islamists was in 2001, 2002. And that's only because I think on a television interview, I blurted out that I was not a Muslim. And then I remained in public critical of Islam. And that is the first series of threats. And by October of 2002, there's all these people going to my father, all of this tension building up, like she's next. In 2003, the discussion about Islam and women and the Muslim women in Holland and the way they're treated and how they're subjected to female genital mutilation and honor killings, and they're locked up and they're removed from school and they're sent off to the country of origin and we never know what happens to them. Their passports are taken away, they're forced into marriage. Well, all of these discussions were ongoing and I was at the center, at the heart of it all. So I came up with this art project in my head. What I wanted to do was to take the most relevant verses in the Quran, pull them out, the one that says beat her, flog her, execute her, etc., force her into marriage, and have them written on mannequins, on models that were the form of women. And then I wanted that displayed in one of the national museums in The Hague. I don't know how I got introduced to Theo van Gogh. Theo van Gogh was a very famous and to some people infamous Dutch film director. And he said, why don't you bring the idea to me? We're not going to use dolls, is what he called the mannequins. We're going to use actual human beings, actresses. And you just write the script and I'll film and direct it. This was aired in August of 2004. And in November, on the 2nd of November of 2004, it was a Tuesday morning, Theo was going to work. The murderer had a gun, had knives, was on a bicycle, chased Theo from goal, shot him. Theo crossed the road, all the while telling him, can't we talk about this? Which that sentence, everyone agreed, captured again this clash of civilizations or cultures, the uncompromising nature of Islam, and this, let's talk about things, we'll find some middle ground. And they left a note on his body for me. The note is really a fatwa because it basically reads, it's you did this, you did this, you did this, and for these activities, this is the penalty on it, and it shall happen to you. That was the way he had structured it as a fatwa. So that is that's the tragedy that ended Theo's life.
In Islam, apostasy is punished with death. That's not just some random aberration, that's the law. We flew to Pakistan, and when we got there, I realized it was a trap. My passport was taken away from me. My aunt called me into a room. She announced that I'm going to get married to her son. In the history of our family, no girl had ever objected to a marriage. One night, in desperation, said to Allah, who are you? Buddha, Allah, Krishna, Jesus. And if you're so all-powerful, why are you not answering my prayers? I just opened the Bible at random. My parents are sleeping. I read a line and it was written in bold. I had to basically decide, am I willing to become homeless without a family, without friends? And that's what I became. I would rather be homeless with Jesus than have everything without him.
Did you fear for your life?
Oh, I did fear for my life, and I also feared for the life of my parents. In Islam, Muslim women have few rights. Christian women have no rights.
What do you mean by that?
I invite the Christians in America to give up their therapeutic Christianity. The cross you carry can become someone else's resurrection.
Sabatina James, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Lila.
I'm so excited for your book, The Price of Love, The Fate of a Woman and a Warning to the West.
Yes.
And I think your story is incredibly...
I don't think it has changed so much. I recently heard the story of this little girl, Zainab. And Zainab was one of two children. When she was born, her father was very unhappy that she was a girl. And then when the next baby was also a girl, one day as they were walking alongside the river, little Zainab, she was 1 year old, started to cry. And her father took her and just threw her in the river. And this is the last memory of that mother, of her child struggling in the water, trying to hold on to life. And her mistake was that she was born as a girl. And I saw that in my family, that sometimes girls were beaten just because they weren't boys. And it was heartbreaking because they would cry and they didn't know why the mother was beating them. And they were so little. And then I also knew that, in my case, when I was a child, my mother had promised her sister that one day I will marry her son.
Your cousin.
My cousin.
Your parents betrothed you to your cousin as a girl.
Yeah. And I was at that time living in Austria because my father immigrated to Austria, and he took us with us later. And when I arrived there, it was a very different world.
How old were you when you first left Pakistan and went to Austria?
I was about, I think, 9 or so, yeah. And we arrived there, and my goodness, it was also a little village. close to Salzburg that a lot of people know from The Sound of Music. And that's where we basically ended up. And what I found most fascinating in this village was wherever you went, there was this man on the cross, wounded and suffering, in the classrooms, wayside shrines, people's homes. It was just everywhere. And
The crucifix.
the crucifix, yes. And so his gaze was upon me everywhere. And, you know, it's how Jesus basically entered my life, not as you sometimes hear it in it's a display of great miracles or dreams, but through his cross. And I think it's just because he knew the calling he had for my life was not to receive his gifts, but to suffer his passion with him. And he made that clear from the very beginning. This is going to be your life. Yeah.
So you're a little girl in Austria, you're living in this Muslim family, your father moved there for work, took your family.
Yeah.
You still have a lot of ties to Pakistan, your extended family is all there.
Yeah.
You're beginning to have this encounter with Christianity through Jesus Christ on the cross. You don't
Yeah.
fully understand it, but you
No.
see it everywhere. You're getting this taste of freedom in Austria and
Yes.
the culture.
Yes.
But then you have this experience where your mother and your father have different plans for you than you have for yourself
Yes.
as a girl that's now coming of age.
Yes. Well, it started when I wanted to live like all the other girls. I wanted to go swimming, listen to the Backstreet Boys, and have the little freedoms, sit in a cafe with friends. But my parents considered these things deeply immoral. And then there was always a big fight. And when I pushed back, it turned into a very painful experience for me because my mother used to beat me, and it wasn't just a slap. She used to grab me by the hair, drag me through the apartment, and it became so bad that the social services intervened. And I ended up in a shelter. I was 15 or 16 at that point. And
Can I interrupt you
yeah.
for a quick moment before you share about that experience? In Pakistan, had you ever experienced being beaten?
See, I don't even call that beating, because getting slaps and, you know, for disobedience, that was just the most normal things that mothers do in Pakistan. I'm not inviting anyone to do this, by the way. But you know, Muslims have very great attachment to their families because we are so close. We don't grow up in daycares. We have very strong ties to our grandparents, to the family that we grew up with. And so the attachment is very, very strong. I mean, it's partly also the reason I think that the children in the third world are more resilient, you know, because they have this foundation of attachment. But the problem is, you know, when this violence comes in, and so that's the negative side. And I was experiencing that, and I went to this shelter, and I spoke to the social workers there, and I said to them, I can't make any choices for my life, and that in fact, not even my heart belongs to me. That had already been claimed too. That I was promised to my cousin when I was a little child, and that now my parents said that I was ready to get married.
At 15?
15 and a half, 16, that was the age. And so when the conversation started, basically. And then, yeah, there was this vacation planned to Pakistan. The social worker sent me back because my parents said, nothing like that will ever happen. She has all the choices she wants, and she can do anything. And I went back, and we flew to Pakistan. And when we got there, I realized it was a trap. My passport was taken away from me. I was not allowed to go outside. And my aunt called me into a room, and she announced that I'm going to get married to her son. And in the history of our family, no girl had ever objected to a marriage. And I was the first one to break that cycle. And I knew it will take a lot of suffering. And I did. I announced before everyone else that I will not marry Salman, my cousin. They just punished me by leaving me back in Pakistan.
Your parents left you and went back to Austria with your brothers and your other sister.
And,
So sorry, you're at 16 at this point?
Mhm.
And where did they leave you?
At my cousin's house. And then it was decided, I think it was my grandfather too, who was part of this, who made this decision. The problem is they just announced these decisions to me. I don't know who made them, right? Because I can't. And so I was informed I'm going to go to a madrasa.
What is a madrasa?
A madrasa is an Islamic religious seminary, but it's actually more like a prison. I have never seen any prison in the West who is worse than a madrasa, or the madrasa that I went to anyways. You know, outside there were guards standing who would watch how women were dressed. We would learn and sleep in the same room on dirty carpets. And the teacher was always behind a curtain because men and women are not allowed to look into each other's eyes. And sometimes when girls became disobedient, because it is very hard to sit the entire day, 12 hours a day, you are being indoctrinated with the Quran. What you do in the madrasa is you learn the Quran by heart and you learn the hadith.
What is the hadith?
Hadith are basically the deeds and the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad. I went back to school and there I met Joseph, an evangelical Christian who after I've told him all my problems, gave me a Bible. That was his solution. And I'm going, okay, so, I tell him all these things and he gives me this Bible with a map of Israel in the back. And I'm going, do you know how much we love the Jews? But he did it.
That's a joke, how much you love the Jews, you're saying.
Yes, yeah.
You want to burn, I mean.
If you want, yeah, I mean, that's an open secret in the Muslim world that people hate the Jews. Everyone hates the Jews. And if they tell you something else, they're lying. It's just most normal thing. And so I took the Bible home, even though it was an incalculable risk. And one night, in desperation, said to Allah, who are you? Buddha, Allah, Krishna, Jesus. And if you're so all-powerful, why are you not answering my prayers? And I just opened the Bible at random. It's at nighttime and my parents are sleeping. And when I opened the Bible, I read a line and it was written in bold, you will seek me and you will find me when you will seek me with all your heart. I closed it immediately because that answered a question. I wasn't used to this. We don't talk to God and then God answers. We just fulfill the rules to one day go to paradise. But to ask a question and receive an answer, that wasn't normal for me. And so a relationship started developing because I then became curious and read the New Testament as this evangelical Christian told me to start with the New Testament. And I started to make mental comparisons between Muhammad and Jesus, and especially the story of Mary Magdalene. That was what moved me a lot because I saw myself and the women of my country in Mary Magdalene, who had a mob eager to execute her. And here comes Jesus of Nazareth and sets her free. In Islam, she would have been executed. And I know you guys read this story 100 times. Some people are super bored hearing it. And, I know about it. But when you are imprisoned in a madrasa, in a country where to this day women are burned alive just for refusing a marriage, being set free like this is a whole different thing. You understand this passage very differently. And I think people here are already benefiting from this revelation and the fruit of this revelation. And that's why they're taking it for granted. But for me, that's the first time I felt what love must be like. And so in the mental comparisons, there was Muhammad with an adulterous woman brought to him and execution for the woman.
Muhammad ordered execution for a woman caught in adultery.
Yes. And the same is brought to Jesus. And as we see, mercy. Muhammad said, kill the infidels wherever you find them. Jesus said, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And Muhammad said, I have been commanded to fight till people believe that he's basically the messenger of Allah. And Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers. Muhammad was a warlord who participated in countless battles. And Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. So the list went on and on and on and on. For me, finding Jesus was like finding a true treasure, and a rare treasure. I think it's in the Gospel of Matthew where he says, what Jesus says, the kingdom of God is like a merchant seeking for fine pearls. And when he found one of great value, he went away, sold everything he had, and bought it. And I realized God is inviting me to a challenge. He's not just a sweet Jesus who's setting people free. There's a great sacrifice. And that for me was choosing him over my family.
The priest that you first went to, who basically rejected you. He didn't help you in Austria as you were fleeing the violence of your family.
Yeah.
How did you end up becoming Catholic?
The Catholic Church in Austria was completely non-missionary, no zeal. And I always asked myself, where is the man on the cross in the evangelical church? I couldn't find him anywhere. And, they were always talking about the blessings they received and the presence of God. Can you feel the presence of God? Sometimes they would have this conference, can you feel the presence of God? And I felt pain of losses. And they were like scars, and it was heavy. And I just went, I don't feel that. So is my faith real or not? And then one day I prayed, and there was a revelation that came through to me that suffering is the presence of God. It's the presence of the cross, and therefore the presence of Jesus Christ. And during this time, I started to question what the pastor said about we are the early church, because I said the early church, St. Paul suffered. And when he speaks, he doesn't say, I, Pastor so-and-so, who has such and such following on YouTube. He said, I, Paul, prisoner of Jesus Christ. He was one of us. And he, when he exalts anything, he exalts the cross and his sufferings. That's what he boasts in. And during this time, I said, how is it possible that God abandoned his church for 1,500 years, the Catholic Church, right? I was baptized Catholic. And where did he go? Like 1,500 years? Where's God? And why would a God of love do such a thing? And it's during this time, then two voices across the centuries reached to me, which were one, St. Augustine and St. Ignatius of Antioch. And I describe in my story how their voices reached me. But empowered by their writings, I went to a Catholic Mass. And what I saw in that Mass was so beyond words and explanations that I feel very uncomfortable to share. I know as a lot of people talk about these experiences, I think it's completely unnecessary. What I can tell you though, and I want every Catholics to know, is the beginning of every Mass is the beginning of a great suffering. And if all of us can just focus on that, we would have so much reverence. And I wish that our priests would know who they are when they are offering the sacrifice of the Mass. For me, the sacrifice of the Mass was a turning point to the Catholic faith. And it's the center of the Christian life. Without that, there's nothing. I describe, of course, how I then came into the Catholic Church through a priest who reached out to me during this time. Interestingly, God's providence, I have such full trust in God's providence that I believe that everything that happens to us, whether it's adverse or prosperous, is guided by providence. And so I'm completely trying to be resigned to his will in that. And because I've seen it so many times in my life. And this priest reached out to me. He wanted me to do a lecture, come to speak. And I went there, but to seek. I wanted to become Catholic. And he was the one who brought me to the bishop. I was confirmed into the Catholic faith. And yeah, that's the entire story I describe in my book. It would take too long because we don't have that much time. Yes, but the turning point were the saints and the sacrifice of the Mass. Yeah.
Sabatina, you've poured out your heart in your books. We have The Price of Love here in the studio, which I highly recommend everybody order. We'll link it for folks. The last part of the title is A Warning to the West.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to end with this question. What is your warning to the West?
Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. It is also the fastest growing religion in America. And Christians need to know what Islam teaches about them, to be prepared. And also in order to evangelize the incoming Muslims. You can't evangelize people whose culture you don't understand. And I invite the Catholics in America to give up their therapeutic Christianity. That is very often self-seeking. Love is never self-seeking. And to embrace sacrifice. It can start with the little. I think for us women, those who have children can start with that. It's already something. But I think my most important message in this book is to embrace the cross and let Christ suffer his passion within your soul. It's how we are going to transform the world. The world is not transformed by the powerful. I think the world will be transformed by those who are willing to suffer with Christ.
Beautiful and convicting. Thank you so much, Sabatina. It's been an honor to have you on the show. And thank you so much for your love and courage that you're sharing with us and everyone listening today.
Of course.